Cracking, everybody. Welcome to your Thursday edition of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I continue to have to stop myself just a fraction of a second to make sure I'm saying the right show name. I am Dan Bespris, and we will be joined here shortly by my good friend Alex Rikleen of RotoWire fame. And he brings with him a laundry list of free agency winners, losers, and dare we call it maybe even a free agency sleeper? Not a team we've talked about at all on the show to this point, and not a team that's been talked about almost at all across the free agency landscape, other than negatively for what they haven't done. Gave a little bit of it away with the thumbnail for today's show, but if you don't look at that, then you really won't know what's coming. And even if you do, you still probably don't know what's coming. As far as NBA news goes, over the last 24 hours, Daniel Tice inked his deal with the Pelicans. He's actually their only center right now, although they'll run a lot of Zion at the 5, and presumably they'll probably go get somebody else at some point. And Paul Reed was claimed off waivers by the Detroit Pistons. That's actually a very smart move by the Pistons. B-Ball Paul is a decent basketball player who had no real spot in Philadelphia with Embiid and Drummond there. And not that the Pistons have a whole lot of room for him, but Jalen Duren has those perennially sore ankles. And now you've got a stretch 5 that you can throw in there. And yeah, you lose a bit one to the other, but at least you still have competency in your backup. Also, news out of the Olympics. Team USA beat Team Canada in an exhibition game, but more importantly, Kawhi Leonard withdrawing from the Paris Olympics, and under what I would call somewhat nebulous circumstances, in that no one really ever put blame on anyone. It was a mutual decision. Kawhi decided to leave. Grant Hill told him to go home. Clippers don't want him there. Like, it's not really clear which of these stories is the real one. But I had high hopes. Not that high. I had hopes that were just the tiniest sliver of vertical distance above the midpoint, that we'd get to see Kawhi play in the Olympics and then have some measure of confidence that he was healthy going into this following year. Now, admittedly, we still have 3 months and change before NBA starts again, but it would have been really nice to see Kawhi play and just say, oh, look, he's good. It's mid-July and he's fine. Well, we don't. Derek White was added to the roster instead. I don't care. I don't think he's going to play all that much. He'll play some, but he's very much kind of like the last man on the team. I like Derek White. He's a good basketball player, but look at the little bit of a dream team kind of thing going on, and then you got kind of one of these things is not like the other. Swiss Army knife type players are useful in this regard, but they already have Drew Holiday on the team, who's like Derek White ramped up another click. This was not meant to be a segment taking anything away from Derek White, more so just that now we're going to have to wait a little bit longer before we have any kind of feel for what Kawhi Leonard's health is coming into next year. I was already concerned. You never want to take a shot on a guy who finished up a year hurt unless you get overwhelming positive evidence that he is not hurt anymore. Well, we won't get that evidence this month. Maybe we'll get it in early October at training camp. Maybe not. Another reason to probably don't have your fantasy draft until the middle of October. And then we'll have some calls to make, because Kawhi's going to get a whole crap ton of usage this year with no Paul George around. But can he get anywhere near 68 games, which is what he played this last season when he was a massive draft day win? My instinct is to say probably not. But enough about all this stuff. This is news that doesn't really move the needle in mid-July. By the way, happy 7-Eleven day, everyone. Go get yourself a Slurpee. Make a day of it. They got dogs down at 7-Eleven. I know this because a homeless man lives outside of the 7-Eleven in West LA, and he requested a hot dog. And I said, hell yeah, I'll get you a hot dog. And then someone else bought him the hot dog, and he was like, how about a beer instead? And I was like, dude, I can't. I got my 7-year-old with me. I can't teach that lesson. Son, puts his arm around kid. This is what you do with those in need. You buy them food. Son, this is what you do with those in need. You get them liquored up. No, probably not. So anyway, tried to get him a hot dog. But anyway, it's 7-Eleven day. Go get yourself something at 7-Eleven. Make a day of it. You know what I used to get as a kid was a Slurpee and one of those 6-pack of donuts. I went frosted as a kid because I didn't care if I ended up with donut frosting all over my face. Now I'm a grown man. I'm a big boy. And I can't get away with wandering around with donut frosting on his face. A good point, by the way, by Matt in the chat room. Matt says Giannis doesn't look hurt anymore. Yeah, Giannis doesn't look hurt anymore. So that's good. But I also very rarely punt free throws. So I don't think I've had Giannis. I don't know if I've ever had Giannis on a fantasy team. Maybe I did. I feel like there was a season like 6 years ago or something like that when Giannis's free throw stroke was still in the mid 70s. You guys remember that? Am I getting this right? I don't remember what year it was. Yeah, let's quick check this thing before we bring Alex's interview onto the pod. Yeah, that was it. 2017, 2018. Giannis shot 76% at the foul line, 8.5 attempts per game. So still big free throw number. But the fact that he wasn't that much of a negative, he was number 7 in 9 cat that year. What was he the season before that? 2016, 2017. Shot 77% at the free throw, and he was number 5. The age of the Giannis was seemingly upon us. 2016, 2017, 2017, and 2018. What about 18, 19? What happened to his free throw stroke that year? 73%. He was still top 6. So it was 6 years ago. It was between 6 and 8 years ago. And then, 5 years ago, bottom fell out, 63%. And there was one season in there where he got close to being serviceable, and mostly he's been one of the worst foul shooters in the NBA. And you're going to have to take him at 6, 7, 8, 9 in your draft. So you guarantee you're punting free throws in the first round. And you guys know I don't do that. So for better or worse, that's where we're at with that one. Let's talk to Alex Rikleen. Enough of this nonsense at the front end. Love this dude. Here comes the interview. Enjoy. Yes, he's back. But for how long? Only a slightly sickly child can determine how long we have the great Alex Rikleen back on the show. Alex, first of all, feel better to your child. Right. And second of all, welcome back. What are we going to giggle about today, I wonder?
Oh, you're the one who set the topic.
Yeah, I know, but I mostly wing it. He is at Rikleen on Twitter, RIKLEEN. He writes fantasy sports for basically every place. I feel like RotoWire is the most common one right now, right?
Yeah, that's the main guy.
Yeah,
big. They're the main squeeze.
That's the main squeeze.
Say main squeeze. Is that a phrase? All right,
yeah.
Great.
I don't think you're getting me too'd for main squeeze. That seems fine. So what I've been doing with my friends here on the show this week is picking their brain a little bit on what they liked or hated about free agency, draft, all that stuff, everything that's been going on over the last basically week and a half or so. So I'm going to kind of give you the stage a little bit here. What jumped out at you as something that we should be attacking? And I know you always come up with stuff that's like a little bit sneaky, which I'm very excited to hear what's up Rikleen's sleeve today.
So, the thing you phrased it as, the way I sort of like did my prep, was I tried to split it out into like, moves I loved for fantasy and moves I hated for fantasy. And I'll say I'm going to warm you up before I get to my favorite one.
The opener.
Yeah. So two moves that I did really like for fantasy. But these are warm ups. Are Monte Morris and Miles Plumlee to the Suns. The Suns, they've got 3 guys, but then beyond that, everything is an open question mark. And when I look at that rotation, and when I look at that roster, those 2 strike me as pretty clearly probably the 5th and 6th best players. I'm going to give Grayson Allen 4th. Yusuf Nurkic, if he can put together a healthy stretch, I guess maybe he could, but like I feel like he doesn't play enough to really qualify here.
Yeah, I don't think he's that good, which I'm
And
not saying that to be mean to Yusuf Nurkic. I just don't think he's that good.
and he's also he's past his prime. I mean, I think he's only like 28 years old, but when you've had that many injuries and you're that large, your prime is earlier, and he's clearly past it. So, I think that there was so much hullabaloo and hubbub and discussion around the Suns need a point guard. They got a really good point guard. They got a really good distributor. And, what we talked about last time on the show was sort of like, an omni handcuff or whatever. Morris is going to be that. No matter which of the big three, their big three is out, Morris is going to be the one who is the first to step up, because the only reason that they don't spend more time with a traditional point guard is because a traditional point guard kind of overlaps with Beal and Booker, and has overlapping weaknesses, and so it's hard to fit Beal, Booker, and a true point guard. But anytime Booker or Beal, and probably even Durant, anytime one of the three is out, now all of a sudden it's worth it to put in Morris, who's incredibly, intelligent with the ball, super low turnovers. He averaged 2 years ago, he averaged 5 assists in like 26, 27 minutes. I expect him to average probably closer to 28, 29 minutes over the course of the season. I don't think it's going to be 26, 27 every game. I think it's going to be, pockets of 23, 24, and then pockets of 30. But I think his average assist is probably going to be closer to 6.5, given the shot quality around him.
I have two questions for you. One of them is silly and the other one is more fantasy focused. Are you aware that he had, at least according to Basketball Reference, and this could be made up, one of the greatest nicknames in the history of basketball?
When you said Basketball Reference, I almost knew that's where you were going and got excited.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm excited to learn.
He is the Count of Monte Assisto, assist/TO, because he is basically the greatest assist to turnover ratio guy in the NBA.
Yeah.
So when the fantasy question, I love that nickname, by the way. As soon as you brought him up, I was like, I got to make sure that I'm remembering this right. And so I shot over to the website to double check myself. The Count of Monte Assist/TO. When you threw out some of the minute per game expectation, was that built on the premise that Booker and Beal likely miss a decent chunk of time?
Yeah, I'm assuming, Beal, I think you got to assume like 60 games is kind of his cap. And Booker is young enough and durable enough that he'll probably try to hit that 65. But I wouldn't expect them to get him too much over that. Even if he doesn't get hurt, they should be resting him, at least 8 to 10 times during the season. So I feel like Booker's games max is probably 74, 75. One small ankle twist that doesn't even, the same ankle twist that anyone has playing basketball that costs you 3 games. And, so I think, yeah, I'm assuming 15 to 20 missed games for Beal, 10 to 20 for Booker, 10 to 20 for KD.
Is Monte Morris draftable in 12-teamers, you think, or is he more of a pick up the first day someone goes down kind of guy?
I think he's draftable in 14, and I think he's only draftable in 12s if you're feeling weak at point guard. 6 assists per game is a lot, and I do think that is very much in bounds. So I think that he will be. I think that he will be wisely drafted in some 12-team leagues, but not all. Is that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Does he, you think, impact the assist numbers for Beal and Booker this year? Because that was one of the big And I had a lot of people yelling at me that Booker was going to average over 8 assists a game last year. And I was like, guys, do you realize how hard it is to average 8 assists or more per ball game? But I was still impressed. He got to 6.9. That was a pretty good number. I said 6 to 7, and he hit the absolute uppermost threshold of that. Does that 6.9 come down at all, or do you think he can kind of push through and keep numbers relatively similar?
Maybe it falls to like 6, but I don't think it takes a huge hit for Booker or for Beal. They're still going to run a lot of Booker Beal no point guard minutes. So I don't know. I don't. Maybe a small hit, but I think it would be a small hit.
Are you more or less excited about Mason Plumlee than you are about Monte Morris? Because I'm going to give you a nice little transition moment here to the other name you brought up, and trying to remember which guest, and I think it was Mike Barner a couple days, or maybe it was Mike Catron. You got two mics. I brought two mics on the show back to back, and I can't remember which mic brought up Mason Plumlee, but I thought it was a really good one, and you just mentioned him as well. He does the stuff that Nurk doesn't, and on a team that has offense for years, do they really need Nurk, who's better offensively but a traffic cone on defense? So how do you think that shakes out this year?
I think I'm more excited about Monte Morris just because I've always kind of liked him, but I do think Plumlee is draftable in 12-team leagues, especially if it's, a slightly deeper 12-team leagues. There are 9 starters and 10 starters, and there are 3 bench spots and 4 bench spots. If you're 10 starters, 4 bench spots, so 14-man rosters, I definitely think Plumlee should be drafted in those leagues. And I think that he's going to be a quality Nick Richards-esque, for the end run of last season. I think that he's going to be nothing exciting, but a very quality producer, especially if you missed on center early. Plumlee is probably going to be the more stable fantasy producer.
Yeah, I was about to ask, is there a chance that he just leapfrogs Nurkic at some point this year?
I would expect it. I don't know if it'll be early, but I would expect it. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think happens to Royce O'Neal in all of this as sort of like the backup 4 on that team? How does he fit into all these? Because it does actually seem like Phoenix has slightly, I don't want to say depth, because they still only have like 7 or 8 guys that they can actually play on a night-to-night basis. But it does seem like, beyond the top 3 or 4, the next 3 or 4 do kind of seem better this year than last season.
I do think they're deeper than last year. I don't think that's all that controversial.
Okay.
They brought back Grayson and Royce O'Neal, and as much as I liked Metu, I don't even think he lasted in Phoenix until the end of the season. I mean, last year while he was on the Suns, Royce O'Neal played 25 minutes per game. That's realistic. I don't think he's going to be all that fantasy relevant. A quality real basketball player, a quality real basketball addition to the Suns, but I don't think we're going to have to worry about him. Once you start to getting to like 16-team leagues, maybe. But yeah, those are uncommon.
You phrased it well. He's a quality real basketball player who the Suns didn't have that many of those last year, so they have. And this is kind of why I thought everybody's like, oh, they're going to try to trade Kevin Durant. I'm like, no, they're not. There's no way. They're going to do a little bit of retooling. They're going to try to run it back. They can convince themselves they didn't really get to see what they were because Beal missed 30 games and Booker missed 15 or whatever it was. And so here they are mostly running it back with some stuff around the edges. All right. Again, talking to Alex Rikleen at Rikleen on Twitter. I am sufficiently warmed up. The opening act did its job. Now it's time to bring out the superstar. What do you got?
One of my favorite moves of the fantasy for fantasy of the offseason was Martin to the 76ers for the Heat.
The twist at the end. I was about to say that, dude. I mean, what's he going to do in Philly? And then you switched it up on him. And he knew what he was doing too, because if you're listening after the fact, if you're watching, you can see the wry grin as he was like, if you're listening, you couldn't see the expression. He was like, wait, I'm going to get him. And then, yeah, you got me. All right. So tell me about, because Miami is mostly just losing dudes this offseason.
Right. But, Miami is good at drafting and good at developing. And Jaquez is a player, man. He's good. And Jovic seems like he might be pretty good too. And Caleb Martin's just in their way. Caleb Martin for points league, he was fine, but I never really got excited about him as a fantasy option. Whereas I think Jaquez can be a real fantasy contributor if he gets those minutes up, and Caleb Martin out the door for nothing really opens a huge window for Jaquez and Jovic to have a much larger and much more consistent role through the season. And I'm pretty excited about that for both of them. I think that's going to really matter. Duncan Robinson, he's always dangled in trade bait, but there's now more minutes available for him. And when he plays, he's one of the better 3-point contributors available. So there are a couple of players who, when the Heat were a little bit deeper, I was like, oh, I kind of like this guy, but I don't know if he's going to play enough. And as the Heat have shed some talent, now all of a sudden, all right, Jaquez can pretty sustainably get, 28? You think he can get 30 steadily through the season? He averaged 28 last year. They had a lot of injuries that they were dealing with, but
won't they have injuries that they'll be dealing with again?
Presumably. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler, when's the last time he played 60 games in a season? Jimmy Butler played 60 and 64 the last 2 years, and then below 60, although there's some COVID years in there. But so there are fewer than 82 games. But
I think your point is dead on. Basically, since his last year in Chicago, Jimmy Butler, you draft him in fantasy knowing he's going to miss 20 ball games at least.
Right.
And so you can handicap the Miami Heat also knowing he's going to miss 20 ball games. And when was the last time Tyler Hero made it through a year healthy?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Jaquez, 28 minutes last year as a rookie, you've got to assume there's going to be some continued development. In 28 minutes, 12, 4, and 3 with a steal and really efficient shooting numbers, a 3 a game, 48, 81, field goal and free throw. Like that's the makings of a quality sort of end of starting rotation, but sort of 9th or 10th starter fantasy contributor. If he can get to 30 minutes, or if there's some improvement, both of which strike me as really realistic, especially with Caleb Martin gone. I'm kind of excited about Jaquez. People who know more about scouting and development seem to be more excited about Jovic than and I notice and I respect those people. So I'm including him. I'm more excited about Jaquez. I feel like that's the one I've seen, but I don't want to ignore the fact that people who I respect and think know more than I do seem to be more excited about Jovic. So I want to make sure he's included in this conversation as well.
Do we think someone, and it's almost the same question as with Phoenix, do we think a person needs to go down before Jaquez or Jovic makes that? Let's just focus on Jaquez for now. Does someone need to go down in that rotation for him to carve out that larger role? Because I think right now their starting lineup still is going to have Butler, Adebayo, Hero, and I think Terry Rozier is apparently healthy from his neck injury. I think maybe.
That's right.
So like there is one spot presumably open for someone of Duncan Robinson or Haywood Highsmith or Jaime Jaquez or Nikola Jovic or whoever that is. But I also don't like the idea of 4 of those guys all fighting for basically one open spot. So like, do we need a Hero or a Butler to go down to open it up?
I think we don't. And I think we can safely assume that Highsmith and Duncan are not going to be that starter. So I think we can pretty safely assume that fourth starter is going to be Jaquez or Jovic. If we get any positive anything that feels affirmative about it's going to be one or the other during minicamp preseason, then I'm going to feel pretty good about drafting whichever one we hear that it is. Again, we're talking about late picks, but I'm going to feel pretty good about drafting, 10th round, 11th round. If we get something that feels conclusive, Jaquez is the fourth starter, Jovic is the fourth starter, I'm going to say, okay, 122, you're on my board.
So this is more of a philosophical question, not as much about Jaquez or Jovic, but more about a team like the Heat in general that really hasn't had a large scale off-season shift. Lakers are another team that hasn't done anything big yet, and obviously that could change, and same story with Miami. Do you like or hate when a team doesn't change much in the offseason? I get that it's not exciting, but doesn't it sort of simplify the board a little bit going into the following fantasy year?
Yeah, I don't like or dislike it, but I feel like it does make our job easier.
And isn't that what we kind of always want?
So that, I guess that part's nice. I think it just makes it a little bit easier to anticipate when you have a lot of movement. So this transitions to one of my losers, which I was going to do them all in a row, but this is a good opening.
Rattle them off. Have at it.
Yeah, no, but this goes to this is a good transition point into one of the free agent moves that I like the least for the offseason is the Warriors. The slow-mo and Healed,
and Melton.
And Melton. I think, but Melton came first. So if we're talking about which move, if we're trying to stick to the prompt, it's the other two that I dislike. And the problem with it is there has been a ton of change, and there are now 7 guys who are equally talented. I was going through it, and all right, so you've got, with the Warriors, you've got Steph Curry. He played 33 minutes last year. Let's call it 32. They tend to prefer playing a true center. And they only got 2 on the roster. They got Trey Jackson Davis and the new 2nd round pick out of Boston College. Go Eagles. Quentin Post. I do legitimately think that guy can be a quality 10 minutes a game guy. If you are a sicko in a super deep 30-team redraft
I really
league,
want people to hear that sentence in all its glory. A quality 10-minute guy.
Quentin Post might be the last pick for me in 30 deep this year. Maybe even second to last. It gets pretty barren by the end of that.
It really does.
But the Warriors like to have a true center, and I do think he can do stuff. So say 32 minutes for Steph, 1 less than last year. Say 30 minutes for a true center. That leaves, doing the math for the listeners, an average of 26 minutes per game to split across 7 players who are all basically equally good. Melton, Healed, Slow-mo, Draymond, Kuminga, Wiggins, and
Podziemski. Yeah.
So you got 7 guys. Ask 10 different people to rank them, and you're going to get completely different orders.
By the way, people keep trying to convince me that Moses Moody is a future superstar. So he's technically also in the mix, even if he's not like 26.
In my notes, I say, and that 26 minutes per game assumes 0 minutes for Moody and 0 minutes for Gary Payton. And I don't think either of those guys are 0 minutes per game guys.
No,
so there's all these incoming players, all these outcoming players. Everyone is equally talented. I have no idea what they're going to do with their rotation. I hate it for fantasy. For the Warriors, do I think it adds, several wins? Absolutely. Good management from the Warriors front office have cut money and created a better team. I would push back strongly on anyone who says otherwise. But in terms of trying to figure it out and anticipate it for fantasy, I don't understand. And preseason isn't even going to be useful with a team of so many veterans and a coach like Kerr who is willing to change the rotation frequently. I just said, like, with the Jovic Jaquez decision, I'm going to actually be paying attention during the preseason. I'm not paying attention to anything the Warriors say. I'm not going to spend minutes poring over their preseason rotation. I'm not going to listen to their press conferences because I don't believe that we're going to learn any. Even if we learn anything, what we learn is only going to be meaningful for the first 2 weeks of the season. And then you throw it out the window and you start over with 2 weeks of real data. And that's how Kerr is going to approach it, wisely so. But it's a situation where we know nothing and will know nothing, and it's hard for us.
Do you think anyone in that group is better than anyone else in that group? Like, if you were sitting on your 12th round pick in fantasy, is there one of those guys where you'd be like, I feel like by the middle of this season, the player X is going to show himself to be better than the rest of this crop of almost equally skilled players? Is it Trace Jackson Davis? Is it DeAnthony Melton if his back is healthy?
Post.
Is it quality 10-minute man post?
No, I think Pajemski, Brandon.
That was a good forky kick moment there.
Yeah, we're gonna go with Brandon. I think he is the one who strikes me as the most likely to have the coaches have a meeting in mid-December where it's just like, look, this guy is too good for us to be playing him less than 30 minutes a night. Let's figure out where we can get him for extra minutes. He's the one who strikes me as most likely to inspire that meeting, followed by Kuminga.
Yeah, I was going to say Kuminga probably.
And for fantasy purposes, Pogs, Kuminga, and Draymond all have pretty interesting stat builds. So depending on especially if you're someone like I am who likes punting, and is very receptive to how is this team looking? Can I punt something? If you're one of those people, make sure to feel like you understand the stat profiles for Pods, Kuminga, and Draymond, because you might find yourself in a position where even if they're only guaranteed 26 minutes and no one's guaranteed anything, their profile might be a really good fit for your first 8 rounds in such a way where you really want to be targeting them, even if they only play 26 minutes, and the upside of that particular stat profile getting an extra couple of minutes to your team specifically would be really high. So punters should really pay extra attention to those 3 players in particular, as well. But if you're not punting, I'm going to have a hard time drafting any of them.
I have this weird theory that Buddy Hield, it's not that weird, I guess, that Buddy Hield is going to get the first crack at it like he does everywhere he goes, and he's going to have like 4 really, really good games, and then they're going to realize the shortcomings, and it's going to be the same thing that happened in Indy and the same thing that happened in Philly. So maybe there's a window to like get the first 2 weeks of the season out of Buddy Hield and then move
Hopefully that happens so that I can trade him off of my deep dynasty league. can't drop him, but also, so yeah, no, I like this plan. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, what the hell? Yeah. What the hell? It's the Buddy Hield arc at this point. This is about as many minutes as I said I was going to take out of your day, and I know that you have very few before your child wakes up from his nap.
I got a couple that I want to at least quickly shout out before we go.
Okay,
I appreciate
I was going to ask you what you're up to. Do a promo first in case we run out of time. What are you working on these days?
It's still summer, man. I'm still taking it easy. I'm still working on the same article I was working on last time.
It's going to be really good, though.
It's going to be a great article. I probably have to finish that up in the next 3 weeks, but what a delight that I can take 6 weeks writing an article. I love the summer. Although it is way too hot. Yeah. Keep listening to Dan's show. Subscribe.
Thank you. Appreciate the
I'll take advantage of the promo in the season. All right, a couple other things that I really liked or didn't. I really liked that the Pistons added some shooting. Not for the shooters themselves. Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. I don't think they're likely to have a ton of fantasy value, but I think them plus Tobias Harris plus re-signing Fontecchio, I think that combination does a lot to improve Cade, or if you want to take a flyer on Jaden Ivey, Asar, I really like him. I think all of them are going to be much better suited by having actual shooters on the court.
Oh yeah.
So I like those players more because of the other moves the Pistons did.
Be careful, by the way, if you say Tobias Harris 3 times on my show, then I just punt the guest right off and I do 10 minutes on Tobias myself.
All right, I won't say it again. JV to the Wizards.
Also like that one a lot.
He's clearly the best player. I don't know if because of punting and age, they're going tanking and age, they might cap his minutes. But it would be an artificial cap. It's not because they need to give minutes to someone else. So he's probably going to be a pretty good fantasy player. Slow-mo leaving Minnesota is probably good for Naz Reid. So I like that. And the two others that I disliked, Taurean Prince to the Bucks. That's kind of a bummer. The Bucks have a bunch of good, another kind of good for real life, but not great for fantasy. They've got Connaughton, and they've got Taurean Prince now, and they've got Andre Jackson, who I like. And they've got the rookies that they drafted, and they've now got a lot of options at the wing, and no one who I'm going to feel comfortable predicting has a lock on 27 minutes a game, let alone more than that. So that's, good real basketball, bad for fantasy. And for now, this one comes with a big asterisk, DeJounte to the Pelicans. They need to be offloading talent. They don't need to be taking it on. What they really need is
they need Ingram out.
They need Ingram out for a pick, and even if it's just like a heavily protected pick, I still think it's worth it at this point. I think that the extra minutes for Murphy and Herb and the clarity around how you're going to split up DeJounte and CJ and Zion, they got 3 point guards now.
And no centers, really. Daniel Tice is their only center.
Yeah, it's so so it's a big asterisk there. I don't like it for now, but obviously Ingram is still widely available. We'll see what else happens, but that's one that for fantasy, I don't like it as things stand right now.
All right. I'm putting the lid on it. Go rest, for goodness sake. You rest when they rest. That's the rule.
It is.
That's the rule. And instead you're coming on here and you're prattling on about fantasy sports, other useless nonsense. He is the marvelous, my good friend and fellow old man enthusiast, Alex Rikleen, who, by the way, has 2, and this isn't going to translate to the audio side, but I don't care. I'll detail it for you all. He's not only wearing a silly shirt, but also has another silly shirt that's shrink wrapped. So he's got 2. So what do we got there? What are our silly shirts du jour?
Well, I went to a finals game, and so I got this for the person who got me the ticket as a gift.
It's the
Kyrie Sucks shirt. And I'm wearing a Mickey Mouse on steroids t-shirt because that exists.
because the shirt exists, so it should be worn. I went Circuit City today, which
That's
always gets
quality.
like a variety. I drove 2 7-year-olds to camp this morning, and one of them did say, "What's Circuit City?" And I was like, "Well, I'm glad you asked, young fellow."
A
And
fun place in
yeah,
1992.
I got so many audio cables there back in the day. That was the spot, man, for my stereo to mono converter cables or whatever I needed. Oh man.
Have a good night.
Follow Alex on Twitter at RIKLEEN. He did his promo about my own show, so that's all we got. Alex, I'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks.
See you, man.
And that was the mighty, the inimitable, the delightful, all around swell fella, as I tweeted, Alex Rikleen, RIKLEEN on the socials. Little report that surfaced while we were playing that interview. The Nets are attempting to trade Ben Simmons. Good luck to you. Good luck to you. There's just no way that he's going to show enough where someone's going to give them assets. That's going to have to be a situation where the Nets, who have acquired a lot of stuff lately, particularly the Mikal Bridges trade, are probably going to have to attach some stuff, send him to a team that's got cap space left and can just take on picks and in exchange for absorbing money. So we'll that'll be a, I'll believe it when I see it sort of general idea. And no, the only way you'd end up drafting Ben Simmons is if he did end up getting traded to a place where he needed to show he could still stay upright. And then if you can get 3 weeks out of him, you sell high. Oh my God, you sell so high. And if you don't sell high, you will pay the ultimate price on that one. I have a mea culpa here at the end of the show as well. I had to postpone the interview with the great Matt Smith, Smitty, because my kid had a Little League game that was supposed to be like a couple miles from our house yesterday. That field, anybody cares about this, that field got absorbed by an older Little League team who had won a district tournament, so they ended up getting to host one. So we had to drive out to the god-awfully hot valley, and so then we didn't get home in time, and I couldn't make the time that I had originally set. But it sounds like Matt and I might be able to jump on Monday evening, meaning that'll probably air on Tuesday of next week. So fear not, just a couple-day delay, but that is entirely my fault. Do not give Matt any guff. Give only guff unto me. So tomorrow, as a result, there will not be a guest on the show. I was trying to go all 5 days this week, but I was bludgeoned on the calendar by a 7-under All-Star team game rescheduling. So tomorrow we will start our exploration of the teams of the NBA. We got Summer League, we got Olympics coming up. There's going to be some little pieces of news that trickle in during those, but for the most part, the next stretch of days is going to be going through all 30 teams in the NBA, what they've done so far this offseason, and how that translates most likely towards what sort of fantasy values those guys on the team will have this upcoming season. The goal is to do 2 teams per podcast. We'll see how that goes. If it ends up being weirdly long in terms of, length on each episode, then we just split it up into 2 shows per day. But I'd rather try to mush them together. I just want to make sure we're not rushing. The other thing at the end of the show, please do take a moment to hit that like button, that thumbs up button. If you're watching on YouTube, that actually does matter. Subscribe, that does matter as well. And if you're listening after the fact, you guys know the drill. Drop that 5-star review. I assume you've already subscribed, right? Wink. Yes, of course. Wink, wink. If you haven't, do that. And then if you have a minute to put that 5-star review on the show, that'd be really helpful. We have seen some nice traction here over the last week and a half, really since free agency kicked in. A lot of people are finding the show, kind of the folks that have been wondering what the hell happened to Dan. Dan's still here. Fear not. Dan persists. Thanks again to Alex Rikleen. Let's wrap up today's show. Tomorrow, again, solo pod. Yes, it is indeed a sad day for yours truly. But fear not. Upcoming guests, Matt Smith, Robin Marks, Rhett Bauer, among others. There will be others. Fear not. So you don't just have to listen to me shout into the void. Later for now, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh, thanks for listening.